have gathered and come together here today to commemorate the Lords of Karbala, to commemorate all of them. In particular, tonight, being 10 days after Ashura, we are here to remember one martyr from amongst them. And his name is Hazrat Jawn ibn Hawi.
First of all, it's a very timely publication. It is during the days that we are observing the sacred ceremonies of Muharram. And why the publication is important, because one facet of that commemoration is the Marsiya. And we at the Shīʿah Institute are extremely grateful to the family of the late Raja to make available this work from their private collection so that it can be published.
And the oddity that this year the month of Muharram coincides with November, which for the last 100 years, exactly for 100 years, has been the European month of mourning, exactly a century after the start of the year of the First World War. And observing the commemorations of that war over the last few months, it seems to me that as a society, we cannot agree on how to mourn that conflict, which has just now slipped out of living memory.
I would just like to say how grateful I am to everyone at the Shīʿah Institute, and in particular Dr. Naqvi Sahab, through whose tenacity and sheer hard work, this project has come to fruition 5.5 months after first being conceived of in a conversation in Karbala this June.
और शक है तो जाओ आयत कुरआन से पूछ लो, शक है तो जाओ आयत कुरआन से पूछ लो, कुरआन की जुबान कल है जा हुसैन है, कुरआन की जुबान कल है जा हुसैन है.
Exactly 100 years ago today, the author of this work was born. 100 years after his birth, a small group came together to make his work available to the world. What an honor. In the last few months, while I have been looking at this work, it has really moved me on many levels. One, that Allah has given the author such a lofty honor that 100 years to the date of his birth, his work becomes available to the world. That too, 10 days after the passing of Ashura. And the contents are to commemorate the Lords of Karbala.
कौन कहता है कि पानी को तरसते थे हुसैन, कौन कहता है कि पानी को तरसते थे हुसैन, इनके होंठों को तरसता रहा प्यासा पानी.
Back in 1944, I was a schoolboy in Aligarh Muslim University. And my elder brother, Mawlana Shabbar, was the dean of Shia theology there. Raza Sahib arrived in Aligarh in his political upheaval. But in the middle of all that political upheaval, he asked someone, is there a Shia deen here in Aligarh? And someone pointed out towards my brother. And he was such a humble person. He said, let me go and talk to him. So he came to our house. I was only a schoolboy, 1944, about 13-year-old. And he came to see my brother, sat down on a chatai on the floor. and he talked for about an hour, mostly about Marsiya, Urdu Marsiya. And for the first time, I heard from his lips Ash'ar of Marsiya in Aligarh Muslim University in 1944.
मुझे ये शरफ हासिल है, मेरी एक मुलाकात राजा साहब मरहूम आलल्ला मकामहू से कराची में हुई। बड़े शफीक और बड़े मिलनसार, वो जो चंद लम्हे की मुलाकात है वही कभी नहीं भूल सकेगी।
He was a man in his 50s who all his life had struggled for the good. There was a man who meant so much to so many people, and I have never witnessed in my life such grief. Everyone who knew him was inconsolable, and we used to meet the months after, and his absence was really felt.
Unfortunately, my father was unable to come this evening because of commitments that could not be avoided, but he has written a short address and asked me to read it out to you. Hazrat Khawateen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you all for taking the trouble to come to this event, which would not have been possible without the extraordinary dedication of the team at the Shīʿah Institute, and in particular the supervision and encouragement of the Dean of the Institute, Dr. Amjad Shah Naqvi. I apologize for not being there at the launch of this book, which has been made possible by the effort of people in 3 different continents. My father is somewhat well known for his contribution to the freedom struggle and for his involvement in the Muslim League, but it is less well known that he was a poet from a very young age, initially writing ghazals and nazms, and eventually dedicating his entire poetic output solely to writing about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his companions, and that fateful battle which is to this day commemorated across the world, and is a lesson in how in ostensible victory there is loss, and in superficial loss true victory. My late father, his brother Rajkumar Ali Ahmad Khan al-Mutakhallis Bahub, their father, and indeed many of our ancestors were all accomplished poets, taking islah from the highly regarded poets of their day. The style of recitation of Marsiya as developed by the family is still somewhat different from the prevalent styles associated with Lucknow and the house of Mir Anis. Apart from the Tahtul Lafz recitation of the Marsiya, we are fortunate in that we have been able to preserve Soz Khani and Marsiya Khani, and in the 2.25 months of Muharram in Mahmudabad and indeed Awadh, many salams, Soz, Marsiyas and Nohas are still recited in the rags in which they were set, often by members of my family. This is of course not because of me or my family, but because of the blessings of the Prophet and his family, whose sacrifices ensured that God's sacred message was preserved despite the machinations of those who wish to distort the message of Islam and want to extinguish the flame of Azadari, which brings such light into our homes every year. On behalf of my entire family, I would like to thank all the people who have made the printing of this Marsiya possible, and I am grateful that you have all come to its launch. My older sister Rajkumari Rawab Mehdi Sahiba is present amongst you, as are my nephews, nieces and sons, and we are all indebted to the Shīʿah Institute for commemorating the 100-year birth anniversary of my father with the publication of this Marsiya. It is perhaps appropriate that this event is being held in London, a city which was home to him in the last years of his life.
I was sitting with Amjad when we were going through this Marsiya. Neither of us are really what you might call Urdu dance, and so correcting the text was quite an interesting challenge, especially since we're also working with a manuscript which wasn't always the clearest thing we could work out. So sometimes we'd be sitting there thinking, what is this word? And then now and then it would arise and we say, that's an amazing verse, and we kind of stop and take a stop and then get back into it again.
The Quran says a good word rises heavenwards. It rises up. It was only a few months ago, sitting in Karbala with your good self, Ali Khan Sahab, that when you recited those beautiful ash'ar, it captivated my imagination. And the curiosity began. But your good words did not go to waste. They did rise to heaven, and that is what the Quran says. When they rise to heaven, the mighty ones of high and light hear it. And after the mighty ones of high and light hearing it, they assist the feeble ones and assist the feeble dwellers of earth to preserve it. Why? For it is the very nature of dust to preserve. I would like to present this to you. You recited the verses. We have tried to preserve them, and I hope you will put this copy in the Mahmudabad library.
वाक़यात करबला पेशे नज़र रखते हैं हम वाक़यात करबला पेशे नज़र रखते हैं हम गम में फ़र्ज़ंदे नबी के चश्मे तर रखते हैं हम मातम शब्बीर में सोज़े जिगर रखते हैं हम खुल्द में जो गुल खिलाएं वो समर रखते हैं हम दामन रहमत को अश्क के गम से तर रखते हैं हम और खींच लेते हैं मलक को वो असर रखते हैं हम बहरे नजरे तशनगाने करबला हैं अश्क चश्म बस उन्हीं के वास्ते ये चश्म तर रखते हैं हम